Well, good afternoon, friends. This is Mindie Molina, and you're listening to the Mindie Molina Show live. And like we just said, 772-221-1100. You can call us in and ask us any questions you'd like, or even share a story. Today, I have in the studio with me someone super special, my longtime client and friend, Betty, and she is going to be sharing her story of retirement with us and really focusing on learning what she's learned through retirement and how she can, influence the lives of others that are going to be going into retirement or maybe are experiencing some of the things that she's experienced over the years. So I'll start with a little prayer. I'm going to get Betty here. You can also find us on Facebook Live if for some reason you're not able to stick out the whole show for the next hour. And then you can also find me on MindieMolina.com. It's Mindie with an I-E, Molina. We have Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, podcast, and you can also... That is so huge because one of the things that I always respected and admired about Carl is that he was always thinking about you, and if something happened to either one of you, how is that going to affect the spouse? Mm-hmm. And that's a huge portion of our planning is what I call spousal continuation, making sure that, and that's a good segue even into long-term care planning, because usually what can happen is that one spouse becomes ill, and as you've learned, it's very costly. Mm-hmm. And do you mind sharing roughly how much it was per month?
It was about $8,000 a month plus the medications.
Yeah. So probably 10, close.
Yeah, it ran almost $100,000 a year.
Yeah.
It's not a glitzy place, but it's home and clean and everything. In fact, I volunteer there over now to go visit some of the bedridden people that are there.
And you made friends there, I'm sure.
Oh, yes, definitely.
Being there every day. I will tell you, when she says she went every day, she went every day and visited Carl. But the planning that he did kept you from ending up in poverty once, that journey was over.
When I saw him, we didn't stint on anything while he was in there. And when I saw what it was costing, I said, okay, this is going through a lot of money. And I went to you, and you connected me to somebody for long-term care for myself. And I just made it in. I was 74 at that time. That was the cutoff age.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm doing for myself.
Yes.
And the kids say, oh, Mom, you can move in with me mm-hmm. and everything. I love my kids to death, and it's wonderful that they would want me. But while I can still do and get around, I'm going.
Well, and the other thing, just to piggyback that, is you did take care of Carl for a long time. Mm-hmm. And you know firsthand how realistic that is.
It is, yeah.
So tell us a little bit about when he was home.
Yeah. Carl was never argumentative. Unfortunately, with Alzheimer, sometimes, or dementias, they can be argumentative. Mm-hmm. But he was very amenable to anything I did. The thing is, I had to get people in or change locks on the doors because he started getting up at night when I was exhausted sleeping. And luckily, I caught him getting out the door one night. And I had somebody put a inside lock on it and hide the key.
Yeah.
But he said, I have to go to a meeting. I have to go to a meeting. I said, oh, I forgot. Larry called and canceled the meeting. I'm sorry. You might as well get back in your pajamas and get back in bed. Really? I said, yeah. So, as long as you can go along with their line.
Right.
And not argue with them, it was good. But finally, I got somebody to come and stay at night so I could sleep. And but she'd have to get me up because he would fall, and he was a big man. So people would say, "How can you get him up?" I had to call the EMTs a couple of times to help me get him up. So, but it reaches that point when this is it.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that industry now, they can't get workers that they need. and it's hard.
Yeah.
So you have to start making decisions, and you don't want to talk about it, and the kids don't want to talk about it, but it's something you have to start planning for, because like I said, life can change in a minute.
Yeah, like you were saying to me on the car right over here about being, what'd you say, putting your head in the sand?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it is a reality because just statistically, 2 out of 3 people are going to need some form of long-term care.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's 10% of people over the age of 65 end up with Alzheimer's. Those are big numbers. Like 6.5 million people in retirement have Alzheimer's.
Or some kind of dementia.
Or some kind of dementia.
No.
And that's can be a very expensive journey.
No.
And without the proper planning, then it can affect the spouse. And you're healthy as can be. And I did agree with your children when you were taking care of Carl at home. It was physically affecting you. I could see the change, and I think you really bounced back once you had help. Yeah. And then I'm assuming your visits probably were a little less stressful and more enjoyable because you didn't have the stress of picking them up off the floor and doing all the things that really professionals are meant to do, not necessarily your son or even your spouse. Mm-hmm. You know, I did help assist. I can't take full credit, but I did help assist with my grandmother at the very end, and I understand why it's important, to have help. Because there are even just the strategies of transferring someone up and down. If you're not trained right, you can hurt them or yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah. And how long was he able to stay at home?
Well, I think it was probably a good 3-4 years before he started to get to that point. I saw signs. Now when you think back, you see little sparks of, this is what was going on. And it was, maybe I think he, that we were aware of, he had a problem maybe 10 years.
Yeah.
And it got to the point where, I took him to the neurologist, and he would drive. He wanted to drive, and I never let him go by himself. And they got to, where do I turn now? This is where I go. Places we had been a million times. Mm-hmm. And finally one day we went to see her, and she said, "Do you still drive?" And I didn't want to say I have to take the keys away. She looked at me and she says, "Give me your keys, you're not driving anymore." And where he would have argued with me, he handed them over. So if you have good help from the medical side that realizes this is what's going on, that's a big plus too.
Yeah, so you're saying the support of having the doctor be that authority versus the wife,
right?
That helped.
Oh, sure, definitely.
That's good. That's good advice too. I'm sure there are people listening that going through similar things and don't know how to take the next steps. Right. But even getting someone to go to a neurologist or allow healthcare workers to come into the house.
Yeah, and the thing is, don't be afraid to talk about it. There's an awful lot of help out there. There really is. You just have to connect with it. Mm-hmm. Talk to people. Maybe they know somebody.
Yes. Speaking of which, you can call in 772-221-1100 if you have any questions for us, especially Betty, because she has lived through it and is very experienced and knowledgeable in all sorts of retirement planning. When you have a big family and you get through the journey of Alzheimer's and you have a beautiful retirement, you want to share with us your trip you just did?
Unfortunately, I have a friend who her husband is now in a nursing home with dementia. And her kids kept saying, "Call Betty, you're going on someplace. You have to get out of the house, the routine." And I had someplace that was within 5 miles. She goes 30 miles. She's in the boonies in Ohio.
So she has to drive far to get to the nursing home.
It's toll on her. Mm-hmm. So my neighbors invited me to go on a trip to fly into Lisbon, get on a ship, and go down the west coast of Africa. It was a long trip, 30 days.
It's awesome.
And her boys filled in. They were wonderful. You know, they each took time and spent time with their father, back and forth, back and forth. And we went down the west coast of Africa into Canary Islands and Cape Verde, and ended up in South Africa in Cape Town. It was a wonderful trip.
How did that help her and you?
She was very relaxed. You know, unfortunately, when you go home, the same thing is, but you can hit it with a different mentality too.
You need a break.
Yeah.
No, you definitely, I remember the days, and you certainly needed a break. I think you eventually did do a short
my kids
trip.
came down and stayed with Carl, and, you know, were able to go to the nursing home and stay with him. Even the grandkids, I mean, the grandkids were wonderful about going and visiting Grandpa and, you know, celebrating holidays and everything as a family at the nursing home.
Yes.
So, but you have to be careful where you take your loved one to when you go to a nursing home.
Yes.
And, you know, it's, you find a family-oriented place.
People that are going to be good to them when you're not there.
Right.
And I know going, it seems like, okay, so you go every day and you visit, and that's wonderful. But I think one of the biggest tiring pieces of that is the emotional side.
Oh, it is.
Because it's not that you're just going and visiting. When you get there, this person is, sometimes it's one experience, the next time it's another. And it's just, I think it takes its toll on you emotionally and mentally to kind of face this every day. And you want to, you're excited to go see them. But then also, then when you get there, it's like, it can be disappointing. It can be good. You just never know what you're going to get. Do you feel like that's kind of how it is?
Yeah, and I did a lot of reading. I did a lot of research.
And we went to that seminar together.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that?
Yes.
And the guy told the story of his grandfather. I thought that was talking
about
about the emotions that are still there.
Oh, definitely. And you don't feel guilty if you're talking to other people who have gone through this. And because it's a big change and a big emotion to separate like that. But, you know, I'd go to Carl and we'd first of all, we'd pray when I got there, and I'd sing songs to him. I make sure we went outside and everything. And the nurses were really good because they let us, you know, use one of the side porches, and we'd sit out there. And thank God in Florida we could go almost all the time. So it was really, you know, you got to do the uplifting thing. And it's funny, they attune to music a lot. Yeah. And we'd sing as hymns.
Yes.
You know, and he'd try to sing, but you know, but I kept going.
Yeah, isn't that amazing how it's like the heart and the power of the mind and that emotional connection through music can come out and get that bond that you're needing, and I think that's probably powerful. Yeah, God loves music. Music is just, it's a powerful thing in the world.
And sometimes it's not who you're with, it's the memory it brings back.
Yeah. So we'll talk a little more about the investment aspect, a little bit of the structure, just to give people some education on how did we survive this financially. And I believe it takes faith and financial security, and you have both. And it's done you justice in this experience. You've had an amazing husband, a beautiful family, a wonderful run of life, and getting having those two pieces just bring it all together. So I would say for people that are listening who are approaching retirement or are not in that situation, those are two really big pieces that are going to help you overcome any trials or tribulations that could happen in retirement. And
they happen.
And they happen. Yeah. And I like what you said about talking about them and being, not having shame or having that closed up. Because, you know, I remember Carl's friends coming and taking him to the golf course, taking him, you know, even if he was just riding along. And that was not only good for him, but that was really good for you, staying socially connected.
Oh, yeah. And they had a good time.
Yes.
You know, it wasn't they were taking, you know, he was a drag or anything. They would have had a good time.
Yeah.
it was, it was amazing.
But that probably extended his ability to stay home, giving you that little break. And there's also the day places. Like here we have the Cane Center where you can go during adult daycare.
That's a big asset. He went for, we used to call it Daddy Daycare. And
Yeah.
I take him and drop him off. He really was reluctant to do it. And after the second time, never, are we going to the Cane Center today? It was really an asset.
Yeah.
And he enjoyed going. And it's good for me, too, because now I made friends through there.
Yes.
And, a lot of us are in the same situation, too.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show, because I know a lot of people are in the same situation. And maybe it's not exactly the same, but the emotions, the turmoil, the financial stress, the social stress, and just
True.
it's all the same.
Yeah.
It really is.
I can remember my mother saying, you don't hang your dirty laundry out. You didn't talk about things to
Sweep it under the rug.
Keep it quiet. Nobody's. Now we've had a whole, the whole media is there. It doesn't have to be blazing, but at least there's people out there with the same problem as you.
Yes. Yeah, it's true.
No.
And you can teach. I appreciate you coming simply for the fact that you sharing your story allows other people to know how to prepare. And it's inspiring and it's encouraging. And if anything, it's saying, hey, be prepared, because you never know what's going to happen. And yes, absolutely. The best thing that we want is for you never to have to experience this. But the 2 out of 3 people in the last 2.5 years of their life are going to need some form of care.
Right.
And it can be very expensive. Hundreds of thousands of dollars.
You have to plan. If you don't want to be devastated and dependent, some people are going to have to, and dependent on your kids to take you in and, take care of you. You want to be independent as long as you can, and you need a good backup on it.
Yes, yes. Well, you're listening to the Mindie Molina Show, and you can call in if you have any questions.